Well, welcome to Really Political. I'm Chip Franklin along with Tom Arnold. Great to have you guys here. Tom, how you doing?
Good, buddy. How you doing, Chip?
I'll be honest with you. When I saw that CNN poll with Trump's lead,
Yeah, that's disappointing.
I'm not buying it, to be honest with you. Just because a buddy of mine has been in politics. I've known him for 50 years, and we're old friends. And he says that the polling has changed dramatically to try not to necessarily favor Trump, but to ask questions that allow for what they think is will be more accurate than it was in the past. In other words, they're weighting Trump heavier. So we'll see as we move forward. But nonetheless, it's disturbing. Along with listening to the trial and Merchan, his hesitancy to put Trump in jail. Trump apparently wants to go in jail. I don't know, but
he doesn't want to go to jail. No, because he doesn't want to be strip searched and weighed and.
They don't weigh you.
I mean, I've
been arrested. They don't weigh you.
They weighed me when I was arrested, but maybe that's an Iowa thing. Maybe that's because they're used to weighing livestock. But I don't think that. I think that he can pretend he wants to go, but it's very uncomfortable because there are no good. It's like there are no good prisons. There are no good jails. There's some that are a little more comfortable, but when they lock the door, they lock the door. So. I don't think it would do him any good for that to happen, and it would show. It would probably show that he was, not Jesus, because otherwise he could walk through the bars. I mean, these people that think it's Jesus,
but he'll get recognizance or at the very least of some kind of bail. They're going to keep him in jail in contempt.
Yeah.
Let's bring our guest in. John Nichols is the national affairs correspondent for the Nation. He's also the author of The Genius of Impeachment and the Death and Life of American Journalism. He's an old friend. I've been talking to him for years. Oh, you washed your face right out of there.
Whoa.
Right, there it is. Go back to the scary John. That's what I like.
But let me ask you a question off the top. For guys that don't know, men and women that don't know, the Nation, is that a very conservative organization? Tell me, how do you describe the Nation to maybe people out there that haven't had the opportunity to read you guys? I have, and I like a lot. But there's some people that are like, that aren't familiar with all the media stuff. They're like, the Nation sounds like they'd be very conservative, because the Nation. But tell me about what you guys do.
Sure, I appreciate that, Tom. The Nation is the oldest journal of opinion still publishing in the United States. It's been around since 1865. It was founded.
I didn't know that.
I know, making you smarter every day. But it was founded by abolitionists at the end of the Civil War. And its purpose has always been to speak truth to power, to hold those in positions of authority to account. That has generally made us a very progressive magazine, more on the left than on the right. Mm-hmm. But there have been many times, where we've held Democratic presidents to account as well. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's fair.
You're doing it right now with the IDF and Palestine in a way.
Yeah, I think so. We're very critical of President Biden's approach, although I will emphasize that President Biden seems to be moving on a lot of these issues, which I think is significant.
Well, and Blinken said it yesterday. Hey, look, we've laid it out right now. Hamas it's up to them now.
Right. This is an incredibly complex thing, and I know that's not the core of what we're talking about today. But what I will tell you is that the United States, for all of its flaws, is a democracy, and in a democracy, you have people seek to pressure a president, seek to pressure the Senate, other entities to do what they think is right. We have seen in recent months a great outpouring of sentiment on the part of Americans who believe that the U.S. should take a stronger stand as regards Israel's assault on Gaza. President Biden, I think, has heard that. And you've seen him, I think, both for practical and moral reasons, but also for political reasons, move toward a tougher stance. And that's, that's healthy. That is, at the end of the day, we have seen throughout our history that sometimes the people are ahead of those in power. Mm-hmm. They recognize a problem more deeply. And I think that's what we're seeing at this point.
And doesn't it seem like, a president's doing a pretty good job with an issue when the far right hates him and the far left, and he's just not able to make everybody happy. It seems like that's a good sign.
I don't know if it's a good sign always, because there have been a few presidents who have been hated by everybody.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Along the way. But look, I will suggest to you that at the end of the day, being president of the United States is a balancing act always, and it's a hard balancing act. And when you're somebody like Joe Biden, it becomes even harder. And there's a reason for that. Joe Biden, 36 years in the U.S. Senate, 8 years as vice president, now 4 years as president. There's nobody who's been in that office, I would argue, in the history of the country, except maybe Lyndon Johnson, who's kind of more familiar with all of the moving parts, right? Who really does know, the history and the complexities of it. That doesn't mean he's always going to be right, but it does mean that he brings a lot more to the process. He's trying, I think, in a lot of ways to make things work. Sometimes his knowledge, his deep knowledge, can be a burden because he knows bad players, he knows difficulties, he knows why it's hard to do certain things. But at the end of the day, ultimately, I think, I will argue personally that I think that's also his strength, because this is a nuanced, thoughtful president of the United States who can be wrong at times and who I've criticized many times, but by the same token, who I think understands the play, understands everything that's going on, and hears when people criticize him, and I think puts it in perspective.
Well, politics is where nuance goes to die.
Well, certainly in the contemporary era, there is no doubt of that.
Well, let's go back and talk about. I think that the trial and the polling.
I have to say one thing funny. Yesterday, Iran scolded us. They came out publicly and said, "We're losing. The United States is losing all credibility to be the beacon of light in the world, and because of this Gaza thing." I thought that was pretty satisfying.
Pretty ironic, pretty rich. Yeah. So Colin Jost had a couple of really fine moments, I thought, at the Correspondents' Dinner. I'm a fan of his, and I like his approach to comedy. I think this kind of summed it up right here.
There is an election. There's an election 6 extremely long months from now. So let me see if I can summarize where this race stands at this moment. The Republican candidate for president owes $500 million in fines for bank fraud and is currently spending his days farting himself awake during a porn star hush money trial, and the race is tied? The race is tied. Nothing makes sense anymore.
Yeah, well, I think there's some truth to that. But it's interesting first of all, I don't believe the race is tied. I still think that over the next 6 months, it's going to be hard for whatever momentum Trump has to maintain, unless there is some space even further to the crazy right to unite them, which I don't doubt. I mean, in this interview with Time Magazine, it's frightening as hell to hear the things that he says, what he'll do. He wants to start an immediate deportation. Now, again, all this plays out as to how the federal courts and the Supreme Court will act. I'm also not a believer that Barrett, Gorsuch, and Kavanaugh are going to do what he thinks they're going to do, especially Kavanaugh. I don't think Kavanaugh is anywhere near as neoconservative or whatever that means as Trump would like him to be. I think Coney Barrett is strictly a social conservative. And I also think that Gorsuch can surprise us. But that said, 6-3 is difficult to overcome. And if they grant any sort of immunity, which is a whole nother conversation, what does that imply?
Yeah. Chip, I have to say, I couldn't hear. Did you play a clip from the Correspondents' Dinner?
Yes. Oh, I played the clip. You didn't see it? I'm sorry.
I didn't see it. It didn't show up or didn't hear. But I had watched it. I just want to say something about that. Presidents that historically have had a bit of a sense of humor about themselves, and it's really important. They go to the gridiron thing, and they get to, but it's such an American thing where the Democrats and Republicans and the media and people, they take a day off, like the Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyote. They take a day off, and they do this thing, and it's good for the country. And the jokes aren't always great. It's a tough gig, tough to host, like the Oscars, whatever. But everybody gets together and everybody's in on it, and that's the that's something you lost completely with Trump. Like it's like I have no sense of humor.
Well, he's a sociopath. He's
Yeah.
no, seriously, he's incapable of
Yeah.
that. And I first of all, I dare anyone to give me a moment where he's ever self-deprecated. He's incapable. He's incapable.
Deprecated or defecated? Because
Well,
he probably has defecated. So
see what I got to deal with, John.
I guess you have to deal with.
So, but I think that first of all, I think people underestimated the hush money trial. I think that
way underestimated.
Yeah,
way underestimated. Now,
and I think we will have a conviction. I really believe that from everything I'm listening to from the recaps of this trial. I wish it was televised. But I do think, and that conviction, obviously he's not going to be in prison anytime soon, although there'll be appeals and all that. But he will, after the conviction, will be handcuffed and led from the courtroom. That's what I understand. So that'll be. Does that help him? Does that help him or hurt him politically?
It hurts him politically. It hurts him a lot.
I thought so too.
It hurts him a lot. First and foremost, let me just deviate for 1 second and come off your brief comment on the Correspondent Center, because I think one of the big deals that we ought to pause and recognize is Joe Biden sat there for 3 hours and listened to it, took it, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I always wonder: was there a pee break in that for like people?
There's got to be. You got to be. The camera goes off. You slide.
I always worry about that. I sat on a day house before for like an hour and a half, and like 30 minutes into it, I went, "Oh my God, I'm gonna die."
Yeah. Well, there's an outside chance that the president comes prepared for these things. I don't know, but look. Here's the bottom line. Here's the bottom line to understand. Donald Trump couldn't sit for 3 hours.
No.
Humor about him. You know that, Tom. You know that, Chip. The reality is he couldn't do it. Joe Biden did it quite, amiably. You could see him laughing. You could see him listening intently, kind of sighing at times.
His timing was great on those jokes. The timing, especially on the 6-year-old one, where he said he paused. He goes, "I'm running a race," and he paused against a 6-year-old, and the timing was perfect.
And this is a big deal because our Republican friends kind of staked their whole campaign, really did, on the concept that they were going to portray Joe Biden as physically and mentally so inept that he couldn't possibly, manage a campaign, let alone the presidency. And I think they actually started to believe that. I mean, this was a lie they created, but then they actually started to believe the lie until the State of the Union address, right? And then Biden comes on strong. It's very effective. Here again, you had another test, if you will, and Biden comes through it, shining colors, right? Very strong. And so I'm not here to pitch Joe Biden and tell you he's doing everything right, but I am telling you that the Republicans are doing everything wrong. Their whole strategy is kind of falling apart here, and that was another example of it. Now, let me go to your very good question that you asked.
Hold on. Let me say one other example. One other thing. Biden got on a train for like 12 hours in Ukraine and secretly went across how freaking dangerous is that? And went across the country to meet Zelensky, went to him. Now, to me, that's putting it, I don't know.
He has been backing Ukraine since 1995, 94. Yeah. He has been an advocate. Clinton used to say he was a pain in the ass. He wouldn't shut up about Ukraine. Yeah. And when you hear these people's stories and the brutality, from Afghanistan, when you hear the stories of what they did to these people, it's like in that movie, Charlie Wilson's War. It was exactly like it happened. They brought in helicopters and mowed people down. These are this administration, Putin and his friends from the military through the oligarchs. They're vicious people, and the Russian people know it.
That's right.
So the endurance, the issue, the Republican. He did get on a train, risking. Holy shit! Can you imagine if things got sideways with that? And you don't see a lot of, certainly not Trump. Like, I'm going to get on this train, and it could. Who knows?
Trump wouldn't go to the French graveyard because it was raining and his hair would get wet. Yeah. To commemorate U.S. soldiers in World War II.
That's exactly right. So let's jump back to that question you asked, Chip. Though the very good question about whether this potential conviction helps or hurts Trump. It hurts him terribly. Now, first and foremost, this trial itself hurts him. It hurts him on two levels. One, you got a guy who's running for president of the United States sitting in court fallen asleep some of the time. You know, I mean, it's embarrassing on a whole bunch of levels, but also just the fact that he has to go there every day. That reemphasizes the problem. Then you've got, you know, the practical reality that time that he should be spending on the campaign trail is being spent dealing with his legal troubles. That's harmful politically. And then the final thing is this issue of, you know, if he's convicted, do people feel he's persecuted, or do they feel he's, you know, a bad guy? Well, the polling data shows us that among marginal Republicans, that's independents and Republicans who might not vote for Trump, the biggest thing, the overwhelming problem they have is if Trump is convicted. Right. In New Hampshire, close to 50% of them said if Trump's convicted, he's unfit to be president of the United States. And so, and this is true in other exit polling as well. So we're seeing on a regular basis, you know, some states, 75,000, 80,000, 150,000 voters voting for Nikki Haley, even though she's not running. The ghost candidacy of Nikki Haley is still getting all these votes.
She got 150,000 in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, I know. But in every battleground state, in every major battleground state, she's gotten more than what the likely margin of difference is in the race. Okay. So you got a lot of marginal Republicans there. And the polling says that the thing that will tip them is if he's convicted, right? That's makes him unfit. Bottom line is
that's it. That's the thing. That's all.
I know. Look, these are Republicans who've already voted for him in the past often, right?
I know.
And so you have to look at that and recognize a conviction is incredibly damaging to Donald.
Listen to this. This is funny. This is Jesse Waters talking about Trump having to go to court.
They're draining his brain and his body. Now, I don't like to sit. They say sitting is the new smoking. You're going to take a man who's usually golfing or in action, and you're going to sit him in a chair in freezing temperatures and just let people rip you and you can't say anything? 4 days a week? 8 hours a day? That takes a toll.
It does take a toll.
Can you not still hear that, Tom?
I cannot. But I heard. I know what I'm a huge fan of Jesse Waters, and he seems to have found a way. He's the first opinion guy at Fox to slam Trump by to pretend he's defending Trump, but to slam him,
right?
You know, by his 80-year-old
complete lack of irony. Yeah,
that's it. You know, I mean, you got to find a different way to do stuff. And
you know, he cost Fox. By putting him in Tucker's spot, Fox is making about $150 million more a year just off his salary. Yeah, and I mean, it's a remarkable. That's what Fox is doing now. I mean, Fox is they're hedging their bets. You can see it. You know, they got Maria Bartiromo beating up Jim Jordan yesterday or day before. They're trying to figure out what happens if Trump becomes president, or if Trump is not reelected. And what is that? I mean, if you believe the things that Trump says he's going to do, and I don't know what would stop him, honestly. And many of these, Fox is going to find themselves either with him or not with him. There's not going to. I mean, Trump's not going to. He's going to look at OAN or Newsmax and build one of these up into the next Fox. I really believe that. I think that you're looking at something right now that is critical for a lot of major corporations and a lot of people close to him, trying to figure out what's their next step. If we support him, what's going to happen to us? Do we really want, if he's elected, is it really going to be good for us?
I'll tell you what Fox is thinking. I used to work for News Corp. They pay very well, but when they're done, they're done. Now, in this situation, they're all in on Trump. They've helped put us in this position.
Right.
Where they could have had courage. But if Trump loses and this goes sideways for them, they're going to sell the Murdochs will sell Fox. That's their
whom? Who's going to want it?
Interesting.
I think they will. Well,
the thing is, this is the problem. Fox can't exist without Murdoch, right?
Exactly.
They may sell it, and I don't deny. I think Tom may well be right, but it doesn't exist without him. Because Murdoch is a political player who happens to own media platforms, right? As opposed to being a media player who owns political platforms, whatever. And so if Murdoch's out of the game, the Fox as we know it goes away as well. Then you have the bean counters, the traditional executives, they come in. bottom line, though, is I think Trump is already a problem for Fox. He's so erratic. He says and does things that are very difficult to defend. Now, they have again and again come back to him, right? They've parted company and then returned, and parted company and returned. But I think it gets more difficult every time. And one of the things that's also true, whether we like it or not, is that with each presidential election cycle, cable news networks become less relevant because people are getting their information from, not that we're necessarily the biggest deal in town, but from precisely what we're doing right now, right? You're creating all sorts of different vehicles. They exist on all sorts of different platforms. They come to people through their phone rather than, and sitting down in the traditional living room setting and stuff like that. And so even now, Fox is less relevant to Trump.
You know what Fox's mean age is? This blew me away.
300?
No, it's 71 and a half. That means half of their people are over 72 years old. That's not sustainable for ad sales. And obviously the same as, I don't know what it is with OAN and Newsmax, but I'm going to guess it's even older. It's even higher.
What I will argue is it's true pretty much across cable networks, right?
Yeah, that's true.
It's true.
Increasingly, the reality is people are getting, it's not just young people anymore. It's people well into middle age. They're getting their news off their phone, right? Yeah. They're getting it off a stream.
Which is frightening too, on another level.
It's killed newspapers, right? Yeah. It's now killing, more traditional television news operations and things like that. But it is the world we live in. And what that means is that, people are investing a huge amount of money into creating all sorts of different platforms and all sorts of different vehicles to communicate on. Trump has been very good at this historically, right? This was his genius, if you will, quote unquote, was knowing how to use Twitter back in 2015, 2016.
And Musk coming in didn't hurt, and I guess in the last 2 years, even though now he's on True Social, which is, every second we speak right now, you can hear their stock going down more. That was a good that Biden had about his stock the other day, about maybe we could, make some money by shorting that stock. But let me ask you guys a question about RFK Jr. I want to play this. I know, Tom, you can't hear it, but for everybody,
I've heard him enough.
Okay, well, this is Colin Jost's joke about RFK. And real quick here.
By the way, President Biden, isn't it crazy that he's only our second Catholic president? And what's even crazier is that in just a few short months, we'll have our third in RFK Jr. I'm kidding. Like his vaccine card says, he doesn't have a shot.
Great joke. The joke was, it says RFK Jr. like his vaccine card, he doesn't have a shot. But I do think it's been interesting to listen. I saw him on Bill Maher trying to walk back his vaccine. I saw, and now of course Trump and Kerry Lake and others trying to walk back abortion. The question is, as we move into the fall here, what will happen as these guys continue to walk back on these positions that used to be so strong for the Republican Party? I mean, not the vaccine thing, but the anti-government deal, it kind of goes hand in hand with that, but especially abortion. I don't know, RFK Jr. and his Catholic background, and of course, Biden's Catholic background, you would think that they would be pro-life, but that was kind of, for those of us old enough to remember, the Catholics went to the right after Roe v. Wade in 73. Before that, they were walking hand in hand with Jews and blacks and all through the 60s. But Roe v. Wade was that thing, and it was the third rail forever. I don't know if there is a third rail anymore. What's going to happen with abortion and Republicans over the next 6 months?
Well, I can start and tell you that after the Supreme Court's ruling in 2022 on this case, there were a lot of pundits who said, well, Americans have very short attention span, right? That they'll be very, very concerned about the loss of abortion rights, but that then some other issue will subsume it. Something else will fill that void over time. That just has not been the case. The anger over the assault on abortion rights has powered the Democrats to better than expected finishes in 2022, 2023, in special elections, even into this year. It just doesn't go.
Oh, John, do you remember the red wave that was supposed to happen in 2022?
I read tsunami, right? Yeah. I mean, it was going to be the biggest thing going. And this, I will tell you, I am one of those people who had to learn this. I didn't, over time you keep covering elections. You think, well, maybe other issues will arise. The fact of the matter is that abortion rights is going to be a central issue in this fall's election. It's going to be a very big deal. It's going to help Biden, right? I mean, it's a simple reality that even a lot of people who don't particularly like Joe Biden will say, I got to vote for him, right? Because even if Trump's trying to soften his messaging on it, there's no way you soften the Republican messaging on this issue. They branded themselves.
Well, it put Arizona in bluish purple, I believe.
Yep.
And I look at some of these other swing states. I look at Georgia, and I think about that.
Or
if
Florida.
that case gets to trial in Georgia, Georgia was blue in 2020. And numbers are indicating that and I find this, of all these swing states, supposedly that RFK Jr. is supposedly helping Trump, which I don't believe. Georgia looks like it's moving more and more every day toward blue again. And of course, they elected a black and a Jewish senator in that state. So there was all sorts of hope. But abortion, explain to me how does it work, because it gets people to the polls that maybe wouldn't go to the polls? Because I don't see a person who was a Trump supporter running away from Trump simply on his weird changing stances on abortion. Are we talking about just getting people who haven't voted before, who or were slow to vote? Is that the key here?
Yes. Remember this: Donald Trump's base is maximized. His voters are going to come, right? They're going to be there early and line up. They're ready to go vote. But he has very little ability to expand that base. Right. It doesn't matter
though, right? I mean, he needs those swing states. I mean, he's going to lose the popular vote. He's going to lose by 5 million in the popular vote with easy.
Right. But here's where the key is. Biden always needs a boosted base, right? He needs to get more than just his base, because his base is roughly equal to Trump's, right? That's around where Hillary Clinton was back in 2016. Biden won in 2020 because he had a boosted base. He got more people come. He got a lot of young people who weren't likely to come and vote. They came out and did so. A lot of other folks did as well. And it appears that abortion as an issue has continued to do that, to bring an unexpectedly large number of people who are not constant voters out, and they tend to vote Democratic. Now, this year is going to be complex for a lot of reasons. When you look at young voters, especially, and that's for Biden been the boosted base, right? That's the people who come out largely, not always, but voting on abortion rights and a host of other issues. They vote for Biden. It's very beneficial for them. This year, there's some who are going to be upset about Gaza. There's some who are going to be upset about other issues. And so there's going to have to be more of an effort, perhaps. But at the end of the day, I'll suggest to you that still, abortion rights is the issue that brings a substantial number of younger voters to the polls, especially younger women. They cast their ballot for Biden. That means that he wins in states like Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, probably Arizona. And this year, I'm going to suggest to you, keep an eye on North Carolina. There seems to be some real movement there.
That guy's insane. The Republican governor.
Yeah. So keep this all in mind, because at the end of the day, people vote a whole ballot, right? And so when you're trying to mobilize people in particular states, maybe, abortion is a useful mobilization issue in many states, but in a state like North Carolina, it could become a super useful.
Well, Tom knows this in California. When you have certain props up there, it really gets people out. I mean, we had the vote for gay marriage. What was that? Prop 8? Yeah, Prop 8. That got a lot of people out that hadn't voted before, And of course, it was an off election year. But in an election year, like we're going to see in what states are having this on the ballot, abortion? Is it Arizona?
Florida has it.
Florida,
Arizona.
Yeah.
No, I mean, and it could be more. This is there's a lot of things in play. And so the reality is that I think the prospect of a referendum in Florida actually has the potential to bring Florida, that's been a little out of play, back toward play. And that's significant for two races. It's significant for the presidential. It's clear the Biden people are going to make a play for Florida, which is significant. But it's also very significant for the Senate. We haven't talked a lot about those Senate races. But remember, if Florida becomes a competitive state for the Senate race, for Rick Scott's race down there, that really increases Democrats' chances of holding the Senate.
Mm-hmm.
How many votes do you need to get rid of the filibuster? 61?
Majority.
51. Okay.
Yeah. It's set. You set the rules at the start of a Senate.
Okay. So the parliamentary stuff is 51.
Yeah.
Okay. That one of the things I worry about Trump and a Republican House and a Republican Senate. Obviously, if you got 67 votes, I mean, and you had Trump and you had and the House, theoretically, you can impeach Supreme Court judges. You could do all sorts of crazy things. And I used to think that was impossible, but I think we'll all agree now that everything's on the table and we have to approach this election with that in mind. Would you guys agree?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think there's any question. I think because Chip and Tom, I think the thing that's changed in American politics is that the traditional guardrails are off, right? Mm-hmm. You just don't have many people especially in the Republican caucus, in the Senate and in the House, who will say, "Oh, hold it, I'm not sure we should do that." Mm-hmm. Right? And by and large, it's a debate about who yells more loudly. Let's do that. Mm-hmm. Let's go to the crazy place. Mm-hmm. And so as a result, a lot of things that seemed impossible now are very much in play. And also the Republicans tend, and Democrats do this too sometimes, so we should be honest about it, but Republicans tend to be especially excited about the show vote, right? Even if they don't win everything, they at least, push something to a limit. They were all excited about impeaching, Mayorkas. And, and I mean, it to you and I, to all of us, it seemed absurd, right? It seemed pointless. To them, that was a huge deal. They're still talking about it like crazy. And so
that's what Bartiromo was giving Jordan a hard time for. He was saying, what are you guys doing? This is ridiculous. You're going after she didn't say the names, but Mayorkas and Biden, and you had nothing. And then we have that famous clip of Ducey and Comer where Ducey's like, where's the evidence? Biden's done nothing. And to see Fox do that, or Ducey's kind of a conflicted guy. You can tell, I think
he's tired of it.
Well, and Kilmeade's a pain in the ass. And that guy he's such a mope. And, I interviewed him once when he had a Civil War book out. And before we go on the air, when I was at KGO, he said, well, I don't want to talk politics. And I go, well, why do you think you're on with me? I mean, I want to talk about your Civil War book. Are you serious? Can you war by doll or something? Give me a break.
I used to love when I still do it sometimes, but not as much. But I would interview famous people, prominent people, political figures when they had written a book, right? And I always took that assignment. I always took that chance because you knew you could get more, you get the conversation into a more interesting place. I interviewed Jimmy Carter a number of times. Mm-hmm. And he'd have a book out about something. And, Carter's a pretty good writer. And I'm willing to give him a couple of questions about his book. But what was exciting was that when you could get, you got the former president of the United States talking about fundamental issues.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And do you think that guy who wrote a book about Civil War would have
he's recognized
in what's going on these days? But
totally.
Well, people forget that Lincoln suspended habeas corpus during the Civil War, and it was criticized, and still is to this day criticized for that.
Well, he also expanded the Supreme Court.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean that's Congress does that. I thought.
No. Well, I mean, Congress and Lincoln together, they expanded the Supreme Court. The president appoints, right? Congress approves. But no, you didn't have to have any ruling. There is no set rule on the size of the Supreme Court.
No. In fact,
so Lincoln had a problem because he had a couple justices on there they didn't think were overly sympathetic to the Northern cause. So they just put more justices on.
Mm.
Which I think is smart. I would like to have the future of our nation rest on more hands than are in a pickup basketball game, I think and I wouldn't mind, sitting together with conservatives, and say, let's find some people here that we both like. Garland was a perfect example. Merrick Garland would have been, I think, a good justice in that he seems like a tempered guy that looks through the entire issue. Whereas, you got Clarence Thomas and Ginny, of course, who was writing to Meadows on January the 6th, was down there early in the day. We have a lot of problems with this particular court. I don't just mean the politics of it, same with Alito, I mean, we find ourselves
about Clarence. Nobody wants to be blamed for their crazy wife. I get blamed for my crazy ex-wife.
Yeah. Difference is you're not storming the Capitol with her.
That's right. And sometimes it's just so on the head that you gotta go, okay, I'm gonna sit this thing out here.
Hey, Tom, let me ask you a question, because we live in California, and I think this is actually a huge issue that the Democrats should approach. And I'm not exactly sure how they should, but I don't think they can leave it there. When we get closer to the election, we're going to see those images of smash and grab in San Francisco and LA. People run into an Apple store, grabbing them, and nobody doing anything. Insurance companies. Now, my son is a manager at a grocery store, and he says he'll have to fire anybody that tries to tackle somebody that's stealing. It's people, they have some expensive bottles of wine. They got a $5,000 bottle of wine where he works in the cabinet. And somebody was opening the cabinet for another customer. This guy grabbed it and ran out the door, and nobody was allowed to touch him.
Well, they don't want to get, they don't want, you risk your employees' health when you depend on them to do this stuff. And I think that's kind of a good, I think they just have.
Well, you hire an employee that knows how to use a baseball bat. It has to be stopped. And I'm a liberal. I'm a progressive.
Yeah.
But this cannot continue.
Yeah. Well, there's got to be a way to stop it. I feel like they are getting better at this. First of all, they're busting the big rings that would bring 50 people to a mall and have them smash and grab and do this stuff. So the law enforcement is at least getting their heads around that. I think.
Did you see Eric Trump talking about this? He goes, I go in and I can't even get my skin lotion. I got to go. And everybody, of course, was going like, look, if you want to masturbate, dude, don't be telling us all about what you need for that.
Right.
But
By the way, the lotion is no good. You got to get the oil. You got to get the K. It doesn't go. But a $5,000 bottle of wine. Who frickin' needs a $5,000 bottle of wine? That's crazy.
Well, people that want to impress other people, but you don't buy a $5,000 bottle of wine at Safeway. I don't know. But let's go back to this. So, I mean, these are the issues that they're going to do. The immigration issue. Obviously, we know that Trump killed the Johnson bill. Langford has come out. Romney have come out. They've all come out and said that this hurt America. Trump was doing this for himself, and he, in the process, hurt America. Yet Trump is still out there talking about immigration. Marjorie Taylor Greene, Gates, all these others, they're still talking about it. I mean, we should have a commercial every 30 seconds on television saying this was the bill. It stopped catch and release. We held migrants until their asylum hearings. And when border encounters got to a certain point, we shut down the border. And Trump is still saying the bill would let 5,000 people in a day. And Langford said, that's a lie. This conservative Republican senator is calling the nominee for his party a liar. And it's not resonating. This is a Republican. The Democrats have to make this resonate. The border and crime, on those two issues alone, they could pick up huge numbers of votes.
Well, I saw a great editorial in the Wall Street Journal, which we all admit is a conservative, and it kind of went piece by piece through Trump saying how much better things were under him, the economy, no wars, whatever. But it went piece by piece, and I thought, and the way it was written was not like, oh, Trump is a liar, he's this. It wasn't. It was like, well, this is the fact about this, and then this happened here, and then this happened here. And I thought that's the kind of stuff that gets through to a couple people, a couple conservatives, because it's just fact-based, and it has to do with finances and military and this and that, because we forget. We're like, oh, things were, things were terrible for me, but I think that people could go, okay, the economy, the whatever, they don't have to, and Fox News doesn't have to put any qualifiers, even though they're the same company as Wall Street Journal. And Wall Street Journal does some banana stuff, by the way. But I thought this is the way to go at it. Well, okay, well, here are the facts of what really happened under Trump.
But they lied. Tom, they lied. I was on Laura Ingraham, and I'm saying to her, I'm going, the GDP, Biden had a 4.5% GDP. Trump never had a 3%, never got over 2.8. Okay. Unemployment, it's down. Inflation is going down now, while other countries are still battling with it. Just some countries, some of the eight have double-digit inflation still. We don't. And then you start going down and you look at the things that he really lies about when he talks about the border. Obama and Biden have deported more people than Trump ever did, individually, each one. I mean, what's happening now is this lie that if you don't stop every single one and hammer it to death, they'll take it as truth.
No, they'll still lie. Laura Ingraham, those guys, that's their show. That's their character. It's Sean Hannity's character.
But I mean, you were right though. You said hit him with numbers. This is a number. Quit
you can't hit though. You can't hit Sean Hannity or
they'll cut you off
because they don't want the problem for them. There's a couple things that are a problem. First of all, their advertisers on Fox are like My Pillow guy, so they can't really criticize My Pillow guy and his conspiracy because he pays the rent for them. But also, it puts them in a because they have to be so gung ho over here. Everything has to be gung over here. They can't be objective at all. Maybe they'll have Gavin Newsom on to debate or whatever, but they can't really. They don't feel they can be objective. So their content is crap, and their comedy stuff that Fox allegedly has a comedy show. They can only make fun of Biden. So
that guy's horrible.
Gutfeld,
he is the most unfunny human being I've ever seen. They're all dick jokes. He's just bad. Everything is bad.
But they're the same. They have to do the same jokes every night. Oh, the border, the this, the that.
Here's a question for you guys, especially you, Tom. But should Biden go on Fox and do an interview?
If it were very controlled, they have a Brett Baer or a
put him on with Brett Baer on Fox and talk to people. Do it once a week. How could it hurt?
100%.
Not once a week. Not once a week. He doesn't do enough. He doesn't do enough interviews for the other side.
I know. I'm being
limited, but if I think he probably should have done the Super Bowl thing or whatever. But I'm nervous too about him doing interviews. I'm nervous about him riding a bicycle. Why would he ride a bicycle? He's got that old man stubborn things. Don't ride a bike. Don't walk until November 5th. For real.
No, I like Tom. I love you, but I'm going to disagree. Biden needs to get out there and just do maybe not a bicycle. I'm with you on that.
Yeah.
But Biden needs to get out there and do so much more. And it isn't true. It's not really fair, but this is the fundamental reality of our times. Our media system in this country does not know how to cover the numbers and the facts, right? You can find them on the Wall Street Journal editorial page or maybe New York Times. But by and large, most of our media, right? It's essentially mass media. It just doesn't deal in facts or numbers. What it deals in is personalities, right? And Trump's, again, quote unquote, genius is he's out there a lot. Look at Trump. Every day he's in that courtroom. What does he do at the end of the day? He comes out and stands. It looks like a proof of life video or something. But he stands out there in front of some bad backdrop and makes a statement. And where does that end up? On every newscast, all over the place, whatever he says. It's always an absurd statement, but he does it. Biden needs to recognize that in this modern media age, he's got to be physically present a lot. People got to see a lot of him. And you know what? Is he going to stumble, make a mistake? Yeah, absolutely he will. He's been doing that his entire career. This isn't about his age. He was making verbal fumbles, decades ago.
But John, what they're doing, when they talk about RFK Jr., do they once talk about that he sounds like a Star Wars animal?
Oh, he's got some sort of vocal thing going on there. I think his voice has actually gotten better, to be honest.
It was bad the other night. And I'm not going to.
It can be rough. But look, here's the thing about RFK Jr. RFK Jr. is right now he is polling very well for a third-party candidate in a lot of places. The weird part about him is he's drawing from both sides. He is not necessarily a big harm to one candidate or to the other. And so he neutralizes himself. He's getting on the ballots. That is a big deal. He's going to be on the ballots in a lot of battleground states. That is going to matter. He is going to campaign in those states. That's also going to matter. And so what I will emphasize is this is the case where Biden needs to really make his message very, very clear. People need to know who Joe Biden is and what he's running on, right? Because it may be the case. I think RFK Jr.'s numbers will start to tank. I don't think
I do too. I totally agree.
Yeah, but I do think,
especially if they put him on a debate.
Well, he's not going to get. They're not going to have a debate. You know who's going to keep RFK Jr. out of a debate is Trump.
Yeah, totally.
Trump will not want him on that stage.
Right.
But what I'm going to tell you is that for Biden, his job is to mobilize his base at a peak level. The more he is out present, the better. Doing an occasional Fox interview, that's good and that's relevant. But he ought to do a lot of interviews. He ought to be in a lot of settings, talking about a lot of things. And, one of the easiest ways to do it, and and Bernie Sanders actually pointed this out. He says when you do local media interviews around the country in big markets, right, in LA or New York, the anchors usually are very excited to have you. They're very
true.
That's a good point. That's a great point.
And just so if I was Biden, I'd have him do a couple of local major market media interviews a week, just and let all the news come out of those.
I liked his Howard Stern interview. I thought that was
a good example.
Where it was over an hour and it covered a lot of different stuff and kind of a relaxing, not so much in your face, but talked about a lot about his humanity and decency, which you forget about that in general. Not his, but just that it's an important thing to have. But you're right. I'm with you now. But the local ones, that's the key. That's the idea.
Yeah.
Because I know as my business, if you go do the local interviews I do before my shows in Phoenix this weekend, they're way more excited.
Yeah. They're excited to have you.
Yeah.
And
they're more fun too.
So one last thing though, coming off what Tom just said about the Howard Stern interview, that Howard Stern interview, I mean, if you listen to that whole thing where Biden's talking about his kid and stuff like that, the power of that,
huge. Yeah.
It's incredibly poignant. And I would argue, look, I don't want him to have to go out and, sort through all of his personal traumas every week. That's not my point. But boy, he can do it, right? He has this ability. And so my sense is putting him out there more, getting him doing a lot of these interviews around the country. They're going to be covered, right? Whatever he says is going to be picked up by other media. And so it's just, it's a way of him being constantly heard. And frankly, I think that's what he needs.
Yeah.
Well, look, transparency builds empathy, and empathy builds strength and confidence and commitment. And that's how it works. If people feel like and that's the thing about Trump. I mean, people say, well, at least I know who he is, and I know what he is. And that's what their attraction is. He reminds them again of people they know in their own lives. Now, granted,
other narcissistic people who don't understand empathy, they're like, oh, that makes me feel better about my relationship with my mother or my whatever.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah, has a narcissistic personality disorder. Okay, that makes sense. That guy is going to represent that part of my life, because I certainly don't want to give up my relationship with my mother. It doesn't seem right. But now I got another guy treating me like crap. Oh, I like that now.
There was a senator from I think it was South Dakota back in the 60s. He was making an argument on the Senate floor, and one of the other senators said, what you're arguing is just pure idiocy, right? And he said, well, idiots need representation as well. And the fact of the matter is that when we hear our candidates for office come and say things, sometimes we will hear them say things we really disagree with. Sometimes we will hear them even stumble or say something dumb or something like that. I know that the American people have plenty of flaws, but one of the things I think they like to do is sort that stuff out, right? And so if Joe Biden says something that's, misnames something or says something that's off in an interview, I think most people are going to go, okay, I know a lot of people that do that, right? That's normal. And so I think Biden is surrounded by aides who are a little too afraid.
Right. Oh, without a doubt.
Yeah,
without a doubt. Self-deprecation is a strength if you use it right. As long as your self-deprecation doesn't affect the integrity of who you are, people like I'm a shitty golfer, or I'm a long distance runner, but only downhill. You can make jokes. You can make jokes that again, you've seen it with stand up, Tom, and you know that. And I do a lot of
communication is super important in everything, but how you communicate. Liz Cheney is a brilliant communicator. It had to be her that goes up and goes up against the Trump people, because she's an amazing communicator. Like there are other men involved in that are not, and she just happens to have that. Now, since Joe Biden's communication is a little different, he's just got to be authentic. And Trump is authentic. He's authentically horrible. Ron DeSantis is not authentic. So even though he was trying to be like Trump, people are like, yeah, he is not authentic. There's no way, So you're right about Biden having to be his self and not, but again, there's
not a candidate himself, not a candidate.
And the thing is, he doesn't have to. Well, go ahead.
Yeah, go. He's
I was
not going
saying, he doesn't have to be.
some bullshit because he's been measured and that's just how he is. In the 50 years of doing this, he's not going to suddenly go tit to tit with Trump doing tweets or whatever, criticizing, So I think that you're right. The more he's out there, the more it lets people go, okay, that's really who he is. He's not the master criminal that we have heard so much about. Joe Biden is actually genuinely a decent human being. I think that'd be
okay. Last question, and I know you got to go, John. Go ahead. Say what you're going to say. Go ahead.
I'll just say very quickly. I've got a daughter who's in her early 20s. I'm around her friends. I don't try to be the cool guy. Right? When I'm with them, I try to be, kind of thoughtful, maybe a little authoritative at times, blah, blah, blah. If they ask me a question, I try to give them a straight answer. I think Biden has that ability for the country, right? He's not going to be the cool guy. He's not going to be the guy who throws the verbal bomb. He can be the guy who's just a mature person that you ask him a question, he gives you an answer. And I think that's going to come off very, very well. But
let me say this about fatherhood. My daughter's 8. I was a mystery reader yesterday. I'm a single dad. I have an 11-year-old, 8-year-old. And what I've noticed, like my daughter is the only woman I'll ever have to make happen. Like I finally figured it out. Here's, 4 divorces. Okay, here's the one person. And I do, I do like it when my daughter's friends, ask me about a movie or something.
Of course.
But what I've also found is my son is halfway between, hey, don't talk. I'm on with my friends too. Coming in the kitchen, would you say hi to my friends? So I also, when I do sound like a nerdy dad and try to be cool, and they pointed out to me, I just keep doing it even more. It's like you can't control it as a dad. Oh, okay, well, and then you just keep doing it or re-ask the same question. So we are all, when you're a father, whether they're 20 or 8 or whatever, we're kind of all, we are the older, Joe Biden's.
Well, we become that over time. You may never team. You may always be Tom Arnold.
Yeah.
But as we age, we become, we can either try to, cling to something and be, try to be cool when we just simply aren't.
That's very true. It's sad
or we're going to grow into who we are. The one thing I will say about Joe Biden is I think he's grown into who he is, right? He's not going to try to be something else. Whereas Donald Trump, one of the most immature people in the history of American politics, has never grown into any kind of elder statesman or something like that. He is still, the bad boy in the back of the room, making the fart joke. I mean, it's just
and ruining it, not even telling it.
Right. Yeah, stumbling on the line, but he's still that. He says the extreme thing that's meant to get the laugh when it's an embarrassing laugh. It's not a good laugh. And so the distinction, I think, is one that works for Trump.
Last thing.
One more question for John. John, as a father, the nation, the father of our country, we do look for that sort of even guy that's not going to freak out, that we can go to sleep tonight. There's a lot going on in the world, but that guy's got it. And I think that what you've seen with Joe Biden, even though the other side tried to make him this nefarious thing, is as a father, this is his son. I'm in recovery. I know his son. He's in recovery. Addiction, you don't wish on your worst enemy. But people thought, well, we're going to stay on him and he'll give up on his son, which is madness. Because Joe Biden didn't give up on his dog, his German Shepherd that bit 45 Secret Service agents. He is not going to give up on his son or the country or people that are in need. I mean, that's a perfect segue to my final question. Here's my final question, and you probably know where I'm going with this.
I was going to say the dog, I think.
Christi Noem, is she done?
She's done. She's over. Yeah. And you know what?
For those that don't know what we're talking about, Christi Noem, in her recent book, her autobiography, talks about killing a 14-month-old dog with a shotgun because it was just it was a nuisance. It was a bad dog.
Oh, by the way, I grew up on a farm in Iowa. Nobody does that. Nobody. You figure out a plan B. Oh, your dog is chasing the livestock. Well, geez, but you get a plan B. There's a lot of plan Bs. But I think she wanted to show that she was a badass. But it's horrifying. it shows terrible judgment.
Well, she just blew her. She blew her spot on the ticket.
But
She blew the spot. She was going to be his vice presidential nominee. I really believe.
Front runner. She was very much in the running for it. Here's the bottom line. The bottom line is this: we operate on two levels. I'm going to suggest this, Tom. I don't know you that well, but I'm going to suggest there are probably a few things in your life that you're just not going to talk about.
Yeah, a couple.
Right? And I mean, they're there, right? Yeah. And it's just I'm not going.
Funny you said that to you, Tom, and not to me. Funny.
No, well, Chip, I know that for you. I know you that well. But I mean, the thing of it is there's just some things you got. You put them in a little box, and you're like, I'm just not going to make that a chapter in my book. And Christi Noem is so off kilter, right? That she decided to take something that's maybe you did that for whatever reason, maybe you even have an excuse for it or whatever, but that's just not something that's going to come across well. There's no way that communicates. And what I think has happened for her, and this you ask, is she finished? The reason she is finished is because Donald Trump really wants to be president of the United States again, right? And what Christi Noem just did was attach to herself an image, right? A branding that is so bad that it's going to actually do damage, not just with Democrats, but Republicans, independents, and everybody. And so I think she took herself right out of the running. And the fact of the matter is that she actually did something that's rare in American politics. She opened up a national discussion about the action of a political figure in a non-political setting, right? And I don't know. I think we all follow social media. Have you found? I mean, the occasional people, you'll get one or two people who say, "Oh yeah, that happens on farms." I guarantee you, if you look at the tag on their Twitter handle, it's like New York City, right?
Yeah.
Because the fact is, I grew up in rural Wisconsin.
Yeah.
And I knew farmers who had bad dogs, right? I mean, right? Yeah. You know what? Those bad dogs live to be old dogs.
Yeah.
Nobody get shot. You know?
Well, you said something about my past and at first when you were saying that, I thought, oh, I'm an open book. But then I remember I flashed when I went to the University of Iowa, we all got very drunk, and someone dared me to kiss a dog's asshole. So I pulled up my friends still had this picture where I'm doing it. So that is I did not murder the dog, but I do have things now that I think about it that are unfortunate.
Tom, it's okay if you tell it when we've actually brought it into this kind of conversation, right?
Yeah, that's true.
But when you're writing, the point of writing an autobiography on the eve of a national election is to advance yourself politically, right? To make yourself seem more appealing, not less.
Yeah.
And Christi Noem actually figured out how to make herself dramatically less appealing.
In her mind, when she was writing it and approving it, she went, "This will make me more appealing to Trump voters, whatever." And she overshot. It's like, it's terrible. And so a person like that should not have any kind of high government job where they don't even have a sense to make it.
Can I tell you one last thing too? I know a lot of Trump voters, and some of them are charming, decent people. Some of them are not. For a lot of them, their only friend is their dog. And I'm not kidding. I'm not.
No, you're right.
And so as a result, and I suppose there's some Democrats that would fall into that category as well. But you start getting into this, you cross lines of ideology and partisanship. It's no longer a game. It's for them, it becomes very personal, and they think about, boy, I wouldn't want that to happen to my dog. I wouldn't want that. And so I think it's a fascinating character study, and it's a really deep insight into, how you do politics in this country. And she just showed us how you don't do it. And frankly, that's very, very good news, I guess, for Marco Rubio and Vivek Ramaswamy and a bunch of other people who'd like to be Trump's vice president. But she's out of the running.
Rubio probably has the best chance in that group that I was looking at.
Especially with Florida looking like it's a little maybe in play.
They're in trouble. They got that bill you're talking about coming up. Yeah.
And then one other, I think Elise Stefanik has really tried hard to get this gig.
She's too.
Yeah. I'm not advocating for it, but I'm telling you, her stock went up when Noem's went down.
Yeah, that's true. Hey, always the best guest, man.
Thank you, buddy.
Right?
Thank
Tom?
you.
He's such a great guy to talk to, and always enjoy your insight. Again, the Nation's national affairs correspondent, John Nichols. He's also the author of The Genius of Impeachment. And the second one, The Death and Life of American Journalism, which, do you know that I have a galley copy of that I just found?
It makes you a better man. Right, I
don't know how I got it from you, and I never read it. Now I'm going to have to read it. So anyway, John, be well, stay well. Let's do it again soon, okay?
Yeah, a lot of great writers. John's great, but I saw Joan Walsh. I just read a thing that she wrote, who's a old pal for the Trump. She went through a lot of crap. You know, Roger Stone threatened her.
Oh yeah. Joan is another of our writers.
I know, that's why I said I just read something.
Oh, you got it's a great. Go to thenation.com and check it all out. I'll let you go. Thank you so much for staying so long. Appreciate it.
It's an honor to be with both of you.
Thank you.
One and only John Nichols. Great guy, right?
Yeah, wow. Great dad. We have so much in common. That was really good. He's very thoughtful, and we talked about things I didn't think we would, because he has more of a nuance than you, Chip, or probably me. We're like, this is the way it is. But we also want to learn from people. How do we win this thing? What needs to be done? It's not like we're going to do this, we're going to do that. But the polls are. Don't believe any of the polls, but you have to have some thoughtful people like John to say, well, actually, here's what you need more of, or
you
whatever.
You just said something, Tom, that's I think really interesting and relevant. You said how to win this thing, because I think we're still playing to not lose, and I think we really have to shift that point of view around. Like, how do we become? Again, I still think we should get Biden out there, and I love the idea you or John had about putting him on local TV, because it
was John's idea, but I confirmed it. I'm going to make it my idea now. Next time I do an interview, but it's right. So,
hey, by the way, your face looks good up close. Do that thing where you came up close again.
Oh my gosh!
No, you look great there.
Up close, we can see you. I'll get closer next time, man. Thank you, Chip. Have a great week. And I look forward to the next show.
Yes, I got a couple people lined up here. I'm trying to get on our show for us. I'll tell you about it off air, but good people. And always, everybody wants to talk to you and hear your point of view as well. Tom Arnold. Again, check them all out at tomarnoldcomedy.com. I'm Chip Franklin. This is Really Political. Until next time, thanks.